I'm a recovering perfectionist, and I have a very methodical mind, and I've, over the years, had to decouple the rigidity that naturally is sort of my predisposition. I've had to let go. I've had to care less. I've had to cultivate a calm mind. A calm mind is incredibly powerful. Let's just say there's a lot of things in social media right now about staying hard and having grit and being the oak tree in the storm. Well, you know what? A calm mind is way more powerful. A calm mind is adaptive. It's resilient. It can incorporate the reality of what's going on versus a fixed perspective that you're fighting against, which is a lot of wasted energy. So, like, if I had to say anything, a calm mind is fantastic for athletic performance.
Welcome to the Yogi Triathlete Podcast. We are Jess and BJ, and we're on a mission to create a better world. It's the world that begins within each of us. And in our experience, a cornerstone of this better world begins when we commit to training our minds. Today, we are grateful to have Sun Sachs on the show. Sun is the CEO and co-founder of Rewire Fitness, a neuro performance platform for athletes that takes a holistic approach to mental fitness. And I think what I love about it the most, and perhaps even like a cornerstone of why Yogi Triathlete even exists, is this like, okay, you have the data, now what do you do with it? And there's so many things out there that just give us a score and no tools to work with that score or even our response to that score. So we're going to get into that. We're psyched about it. And in doing my due diligence leading into this conversation, I surmised that Rewire is a purposeful step that aligns with Sun's purpose and passion. He is also a longtime endurance athlete, meditator, and animal advocate. He is the co-creator of thebeat.com, which later merged with Forks Over Knives to create Upbeet Brands. He's a plant-based culinary chef and a former instructor from Matthew Kenny Cuisine. There's so much to dive into, and we're so looking forward to seeing where this next hour takes us. So, Sun, welcome to the show.
Awesome. So glad to be here, Jess and BJ. This is going to be really fun.
Yeah, I think so. You want to start, Beej? Get us into the combo?
Yeah. So where do we start? So maybe we just start with your background. Who you are and how you got to this point in life.
Yeah, happy to. If we go back to the origin, I grew up in Boulder, Colorado, and at an early age got involved in bike racing. This is, to date myself, the early 80s. So at the time, mountain biking was just being invented as a sport. I went into road racing as a junior. Quickly fell in love with mountain biking. Worked my way up to elite level. Was all in, 100%. That's all I wanted to do and be. That was my identity. I did start to get the success that I was looking for. However, at 26, I basically completely burnt out physically and mentally and retired from the sport. And unfortunately, I was so burnt out that I didn't even look at a bike for more than 8 years. So it was pretty severe. Trying to unpack that, I think it's the typical things that lead to burnout. If you're have a kind of a perfectionist mentality, that's one of the key strengths and weaknesses. Another one would be, if you have a kind of a single point of identity. In my case, I'm a cyclist, I'm a bike racer, that's who I am. And if you have a low self-esteem, you put a lot of pressure on yourself. You have a fixed mindset where you're really seeing every success and failure as defining you. All of those factors. Plus, I was training, 40 to 50 hours a week. So, that also isn't great. But, I retired from my sport, unfortunately, early. And it took me years to come back. But pause there.
What got you into endurance sports?
Yeah, so empowerment, basically. I was, my name is Sun for a reason. I was born to hippie parents in Canada on a sunny day. So there's a lot to that part of the story, but essentially, for whatever reason, maybe I was a unique kid, sort of a magnet for jerks, but I got bullied a lot. I got bullied. My first bullying was when I was 6, and I got a broken collarbone and other bones broken, and physical and mental abuse. And at some point, it flipped, and I found sport as a way to feel empowered, to feel in control, to see progress. Put hard work in. As a hard worker, put hard work in and see a positive outcome. So for me, sport was really like it saved me. Of course, those sort of things that can save you can also turn into a negative if you take them too far or interpret them in the wrong way. So it's interesting. Still to this day, sport is a sort of therapy for me. Like if I'm out there training or doing something out in nature, things start to sort of get ungrounded for me. So I absolutely still, it's my 40th anniversary as a cyclist. I'm still doing it, and I'm probably having my second wind and in some of the best shape I've ever been in my life. And it's a beautiful thing. But that's how I found sport.
I think a lot of athletes that listen to this can relate to that. Those who, had challenges in their childhood, which I think we all have, right? Relatively speaking, we could label those more severe than others, but I think that trauma or challenge is relative to the receiver of that. And that we've all found power through endurance sports, through seeing what is possible. I say that when I first started triathlon, that I used to swim with fists because it allowed me to, punch who I needed to punch. Like it was like fair game, and I admit this because maybe somebody else has felt this way too. Like for me, it was a way to get anger out. But what I realized over time too is like, you can't outrun what you're here to learn, and endurance sports will really pull that veil up and show you who you are under duress. It will show you the power, but also where your weaknesses are. And then, like if we go too far, we will move into that burnout. But I'm curious to know, either positive or negative, again, however we want to label them. What were some of the things that you learned through endurance sports in those early years, where probably you're stepping into this empowerment that you hadn't experienced before?
Yeah, I think the best invention ever made is the bike. You're basically flying over the ground in a circular motion. Like it's an incredible thing. It's exhilarating. Mountain biking, it's like you're a deer in the forest, like it's an incredible thing. So just that sense of freedom, that sense of locomotion, that the feeling that your body is just really primed and capable, and getting out there and having adventures and seeing the progress, something you can control to a degree. That also, was pretty cool. And I had a natural ability for, I was combination of hard work and some ability, but certainly by no means like ultra talented. But I cut my teeth on that. I also was a bike messenger for 7 years in the streets of Seattle. Some of the most fun I've ever had on a bike. Incredible. Playing with traffic all day long and sprinting and running up flights of stairs, and a crazy, really cool community. Like that was an amazing experience as well.
That must have gotten the adrenaline kicking, and almost, I would see it as almost a point where you actually crave like getting to the delivery as fast as you can, as quickly as you can, with without any stuff happening along the
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. No, I mean, basically, I learned how to unlock flow state, and I was in flow state all the time because, one of the flow triggers, which I don't know if it's common knowledge or not, but I would say it's risky. A risky flow trigger is if you're propelling yourself through space, and there's a lot of different objects that are potentially dangerous. Your fight or flight kicks in, but there's no way to process it consciously. Like you actually have to be aware of everything at once. I'll give you an example. Like I remember one time it's like San Francisco, so you're going down really steep hills, going down this hill, getting air over the hill. So it's kind of a blind jump because you can't see what's on the other side. And as I'm cresting over the hill, there's a car like braking right in front of me. So the second I hit the ground, I have to skid sideways, get around that car, split lane through another set of traffic. And there's no way to go like, okay, what do I do? I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do that. You actually have to just be aware of everything in your surroundings at once. And it kicks you right into flow. And I love that. It was, I could just get on my bike and feel flow almost immediately, which was amazing.
Yeah.
You learn a lot and you feel very connected to the bike,
So flow, I love that you mentioned that. Well, first of all, what would be your definition to our audience of what flow is? Is it, what is it? What do you perceive it as? No thought, smoothness, calm?
Yeah. I think, scientifically or neurologically, you're actually using less of your brain, not more. But what I perceive it as is just a like a oneness state or a connected state where your ego is not in the way and your perception is wide open, and there seems to be some kind of time shift where things slow down significantly. It's just like those movies where you see the action figure jump up in the air and then there's a slow motion kick. It's exactly like that. You're like, or the bullet shooting slow motion at your face. Like you're just like, okay, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this. And it's like 1 second. So it's really a phenomenal state because it's, you're just taking in so much information without judgment and in a very calm, ready kind of perspective. It's powerful. Like it feels like you can do anything,
Absolutely. Yeah, I used to play a lot of basketball, and I remember one particular game and going up and down, and I don't recall a lot of it, but I do recall that being a flow moment for me where I didn't have much what you're describing. Like I didn't have overthinking syndrome. It was more like I wasn't thinking about anything. It was merging with the oneness of whatever was happening in what can be a complicated game, running up and forth. There's a basketball, there's people, there's, movements, and being in that state absolutely brought me, someone who didn't grow up being very confident, it brought me confidence. It brought me like trust. And it brought me this sense of exactly that, like I can do anything I want. And then you see the trajectory where it takes you, and you take that into whatever next sport you go into. It sounds like you've stuck with cycling, but I sort of moved over to triathlon and can feel moments of, or always craving those moments again, like being in that oneness. So a lot of times I feel like I just got to get out of my own way. Do you feel that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's things you can do to kind of prime yourself that aren't dangerous, like throwing yourself in traffic, which I don't recommend. You have to have skills to back that up, otherwise you're in trouble. But just being in a calm, we like to say with Rewire, like a calm, ready state. You're basically grounded. You reduce your anxiety. You can use breathing techniques and all kinds of things to kind of get you there. But if you start in your sport in that sort of calm state. And I would even say maybe caring a little less. For those perfectionists out there, we care too much. That actually gets us into trouble. If you care a little less, just enjoy the experience. You go in with a calm mind. You're setting yourself up for an opportunity to have a flow state.
Yeah. I mean, calm is, I think it's a prerequisite. I think calm is like an entry point into that excellence, which is where we see the greatest athletic performances. You know, we see these flow states. I think Michael Jordan is a great example of somebody just to study in that way, watching how he just, would move around the court. And I think he's a great example of that. And this is so good because this is all kind of setting us up to really talk about this amazing tool. But there's other pieces here too. The calm mind is something we talk about a lot. Our teacher, our meditation teacher, has taught us that when we are calm, we are invincible. Because that calm energy is that energy that has created worlds. Right? And that's in us, like that's moving our blood, and it's allowing for the, neurotransmitters in our brains, to, everything to work, and just this miracle that is the body. And we know, from science, and I know you know this too, this quality of neuroplasticity with the brain, that we can change the brain. There's so much science around this, that we have this opportunity. And there's all different levels of willingness and readiness, right, for how we're going to train the brain. For a long time, I resisted meditation for a long time. That's my primary way of how I train the mind and what I teach. But I know that you have experience with meditation as well, and I would love to hear that story, how you came into it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, after I retired from cycling, basically gave up trying to be a pro, and walked away from riding my bike. I went into software and product development, but I still kept really looking at trying to unpack what went wrong and trying to understand how I could be better. So, one of the steps was reading the book Autobiography of a Yogi, and being just enthralled by Paramahansa Yogananda's teachings, so much so that I joined the fellowship, went on a multi-year path, meditating 3 to 4 hours a day, really following the tradition, and signed a lifelong oath to never reveal the secrets. I got to a certain level where they shared a lot of those details. And it's a beautiful practice and a really wonderful organization. And that taught me a lot. Just being able to understand, being able to look at myself and look at my thoughts, observe the thoughts. There's a lot of kind of body and breath work in the practice that also really helped. And then the other side of it is the 3 to 4 hours a day didn't really fit with my lifestyle. So at some point I had to go the thing that really helped me is one of the monks said, you have to have your own personal relationship with God. And I was like, I love this practice, but this type of ascetic, even though my mind is sort of I like the ascetic approach, whether it's lifestyle athlete or whatever, it just didn't work. So what I did is I trimmed it down to about a 15-minute practice in the morning and the evening, and also just sort of took that away as a very important tool to athletic performance. And that definitely informed, though we don't use any of the teachings, that informed an aspect of the product that we have today.
Yeah, absolutely, right? And spending all that time in silence and stillness and learning about yourself, we'll never be able to measure how that heavily influenced your trek to where you are today, and being able to unearth the curiosity, really, to be able to continue to advance this application that you've brought to the masses, which is, I think, is a gift for so many, because as we know, as the yogis teach, and we are also on a very similar path with the Kriya Yoga, which Paramahansa Yogananda talks about in Autobiography of a Yogi. It's definitely one of my favorite books, because it's the only autobiography that we have from an enlightened being, that walked this earth. It's packed with wisdom. It seems to me, with the endurance athletics and, how deep you went into that, and even the extreme of, the flow state discovery with being a bicycle messenger and all of that it doesn't surprise me that you went all in with this practice. But I think the really wise piece was that you realized, like, this misalignment, almost like my soul's not ready for this level of, I guess the word I could say was like devotion, right? Like you weren't ready to give up the worldly ways to be spending most of your day in meditation. And I think that there's so much wisdom in there, because you have work to do in the world. You had gifts to share in the world. You had things to produce, to use the technology of the world to bring this application to light. And I just think that that's amazing. And of course, I'm not surprised that they were like, you have to have your own relationship to that. And so to give people permission to say, like, yeah, it's not like I meditate 45 minutes in the morning, and then, I'm recommitted now to that second meditation, which is not as long, but that it doesn't have to be 45 minutes in the morning. Like, it's okay if you don't want to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And I certainly didn't start with 45 minutes. I started with 10 minutes of meditation. And so what is your practice like? What does it look like now? Because I'm assuming you're also incorporating Rewire with it. Maybe this is the time where we start to talk about the application, because I'm sure people are like, when are you going to get to that? We want to know. We want to go and know the fun stuff, the data and the science. So let's give them what they want.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, my morning, my morning experience, I wake up. I actually use Rewire as the initial part of the morning practice, because what it does is it assesses you physically, emotionally, and cognitively in 90 seconds. So the way that works is you open up the app. If you have wearable data, sleep data, Garmin, Aura, Strava, etc., we'll bring that all in. But we're not just the sum of our heart rate and sleep data. Sorry, folks. What about our minds? What about our emotions? Those two things, those two domains have a major impact in performance, and they're often blind spots. So what we do is we assess the person cognitively using what's called a psychomotor vigilance test. You tap the screen every time you see a shape, and we're tracking your reaction time and other data behind it. Then we have an emotional questionnaire where we understand your level of frustration, level of stress, readiness to perform, that kind of stuff. And then we reflect that back to you. So, obviously most serious athletes, they're going to know where they're at physically. But how would you ever know where you're at cognitively? How would you know that the stress from work the day before, it's actually going to negatively impact your performance, even though your HRV is amazing today? And then you get out there and you're like, what happened? Or how are you even going to know if that bad night's sleep is actually going to affect your emotionality? You're going to have a short fuse. You're not going to be able to, tolerate the pain that you're going to have to endure in your interval session. So we reflect that back so you can, similar to what you might do in a meditation, you can see where you're at. Then based on that, we recommend an intervention, which we call a recipe. And that is a combination of different evidence-based approaches, which include a breathing modality, like you might do box breathing or pranayama, alternative nasal breathing. Get your body into a homeostasis. We're going to bring in self-talk that you can program. So we're going to have some, short phrases that are triggers to have a positive, healthy mindset. We're going to do visualization. We're going to bring in binaural beats, which create basically a brain entrainment. So you're going to get your brain into a calm state or a focused state, depending on what your needs are. And we subliminally prime you with positive imagery while you're looking at the screen. So that lasts 2 to 4 minutes. So if you wake up in the morning, you do your 90-second assessment, then either in the morning or throughout the day, you do your 2 to 4 minute session. What I do is I do that readiness assessment, then I do my meditation, then I walk the dogs, always religiously 7 times a day, or 7 times a week, I should say. And then I'll ideally train. Oftentimes I have to work because I prioritize sleep, so I don't get up super early anymore. And then partway through the day, I'll definitely do a rewire session, maybe 1 or 2. And then at the end of the day, I do a gratitude practice, just really reflecting on how the day went and how I appreciate every gift that was given to me. And that's done outside.
So if I look at that, I love the combination of the rewire and the meditation, but I would think that I was just having a conversation with an athlete I work with today about this impulse control, right? They've got their phone now in their hand, which they do if they're setting a meditation app, but the activation of the mind.
Sure.
So if somebody's just starting out and they're like, okay, wait, this could be a great complement to my meditation practice that I'm starting, 5 minutes or whatever. If they're just starting out, would it sometimes be beneficial maybe to do the meditation first, get them into some sort of calm state before they see their scores? Sometimes with the scores, it can really rattle them. And then I'm thinking then they're going into a meditation, which again, I'm not, I'm very clear that not everybody wants to meditate. It's about 1%. But with 7 billion people on this planet, that's a lot of people that want to meditate. I would think that the mind activation, it could maybe benefit them to also maybe do a little meditation before that.
Yeah, you're asking a really good question. I have a specific reason why I do it that way. But, I'm a very methodical person. So the only thing I allow myself to look at is Rewire. I don't then go social media and email. I don't do anything for the first half hour, 45 minutes. But the reason I do it is because, and the way you should use Rewire is in a consistent manner. So if you want to meditate first, perfect. Make sure that you're always doing Rewire after your meditation. The reason I don't do it is because meditation improves my state so much that it's going to not necessarily accurately reflect my morning state right when I wake up. Like I want to have data that's hard data on exactly where I'm at before I do anything that will influence it positively or negatively. So that's why I do it. You can absolutely do it if you do meditate. You could do it after you meditate. You just want to do it in a consistent way. That's sort of the key to the measurement. Because if one morning you wake up and you drink a cup of coffee or you pull up your phone, you get super stressed out, well, of course, you're going to be more emotional or you're going to have cognitive fatigue or whatever it is. So you definitely want to do it before you're kind of up and running, ideally.
Well, isn't consistency everything? If we really get let's just be consistent. We're so overly entertained and wanting to do the next best thing. Just stay consistent with something long enough so you can give yourself a shot with things. So if I'm understanding this correctly, because this is where I think a deviation happens. So you wake up, you see your score, you meditate, and then it will give you things, the breathing exercises, the images, the things that will pull you back into potentially a calmer, more aware state. So then you can still pursue the workout that you were supposed to do, not necessarily take the score and be like, oh, today, not doing anything. The score said, 7. That means I can't do anything.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, part of the reason we built the readiness assessment is because of frustration. Like we didn't go into my whole quantified self thing, but I used every device, tested it methodically, and anything that comes to readiness, one, they're not including the beyond the physical, but then two, oftentimes it's just binary, like your score is X, so don't do anything today. It's like, okay, that is not helpful in any way. What we say is, let's reflect back how you are, and then let's give you the tools to do something about it based on your goals. So let's just say I had a bad night's sleep. As a result, I have a higher level of cognitive fatigue and I'm a little more emotional. Well, I'm going to click the prepare for my day button. And then it's going to say, son, what do you want to do? Are you trying to recover? Are you trying to have good athletic performance? Are you trying to be productive? Then it takes your goal plus your state and creates a recipe for you to help really make the best of what you're trying to achieve. Because the reality is, we all have challenging, demanding days. And just because your score is X doesn't mean you just get to take a pass. Like, that's just not even realistic or helpful. And in fact, probably just stresses people out.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what I was getting at. I think most athletes would be like, what do you mean I can't? What do you mean I can't do my workout today?
Well, I think we've heard that, I think we've heard that, like, well, I feel great today and it's giving me a score of blah, blah, blah. And so I love that you're taking it one step further, but I think the most important thing that you're giving them is you're giving them experience, because we can talk all day about yoga and the science of the mind and, positive talk and the benefits and the evidence and all of that. But change doesn't happen in the intellect. Like, it happens through experience. So you're putting them into an experience that's going to help them walk into their day in a ready state to train, or perhaps a ready state to have that conversation that had them up all night, that it's giving them an experience. And I would think that with consistency, which is like such an important word, right? Consistency, calm, these are very important words to be embodied through experience, that there will be long-term effects in the brain. And I know that the product hasn't been on the market long enough to have like long-term study, but I think with consistency and putting them in experience, there's no way that the brain won't be repatterned.
Yeah, repatterned and also cared for.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Yeah, we're like, let's get our ice bath. I have about I probably have 10 different recovery tools here to the right of me, right? I'm so worried about my poor body recovering. What about my mind? Like, when does your mind get a break? When does your mind get a recovery experience? Pretty much never. Watching TV is not recovery. So, if you can manage that cognitive fatigue, so you don't have this chronic state of cognitive fatigue, your brain is going to function better. You'll get the most out of it. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, yes, we have two aspects. One is the recovery aspect, and then the other aspect is neurotraining. So we're actually tapping into the specific part of the brain that's responsible for goal-driven behavior and your perception of effort. And it's modeled exactly out of the science from the lab that the study came out in 2008. My kind of founder's story is there was this combination of the quantified self, all the stuff I was looking at in terms of the devices, the meditation, and the last piece of the puzzle for me was this science that came out in 2008 that I was so excited about, because it was like, wow, you can do brain training, it's going to improve your athletic performance. And I was like, this is incredible. When is it going to come to market? And I kept waiting and I kept waiting. It was years. And there were a few attempts that never came. And one day I was on the bike trainer and I was like, oh, I know how it could be done. made a prototype. We had it testing in a few weeks. And it's all around this way, like you would physical load. We all know what that is. You can add cognitive load to the specific part of the brain that is going to perceive the effort. We always, everybody by now knows RPE, but that is a specific part of the brain, the anterior cingulate cortex near prefrontal. And what that does is it's basically regulating your perception based on the brain's level of fatigue. So if you overload your brain, if you're tired all the time, or you push yourself physically, and as a result, or you have a bad night's sleep, whatever it is, it's the factor that's impacting your cognitive fatigue, you're actually going to perceive the effort to be more difficult. And that's what they proved in 2009. And that's what I was so excited about. And when we built the product, we worked with the same scientists to cross-validate that our product was at least as efficacious as what was done in the lab. So it's super exciting. This is a way to actually train your brain and build more resilience and basically reach your potential without having your brain sort of hold you back because it's tired and misperceiving the effort.
Yeah.
Wow.
What do you think is the the greatest quality for an athlete to really cultivate, whether that be calmness or mental acuity, or what do you think is the thing that they can really pull away from mind training that will really be the seed for their potential?
Yeah, it's funny because, everybody's different, obviously. So it kind of depends on where their head's at, in terms of their strengths and weaknesses. So, I can speak for myself. I'm a recovering perfectionist, and I have a very methodical mind. And I've, over the years, had to decouple the rigidity that naturally is sort of my predisposition. I've had to let go. I've had to care less. I've had to cultivate a calm mind. A calm mind is incredibly powerful. Let's just say there's a lot of things in social media right now about staying hard and, having grit and just being the oak tree in the storm. Well, you know what? A calm mind is way more powerful. A calm mind is adaptive. It's resilient. It can incorporate the reality of what's going on versus a fixed perspective that you're fighting against, which is a lot of wasted energy. So, if I had to say anything, a calm mind is fantastic for athletic performance. That's what you want.
Brilliantly described. Brilliant.
So when you have the tendency to be rigid in your thought, because I'm sure there are still remnants of it still around, sticking around and showing up, how do you pull yourself back into calm? Is there something, maybe we already talked about it, but how do you do it? How do you beam yourself into that's the old me. There's got to be another effortless way to move forward here.
Yeah. I think that, for me, it's about sort of controlling my environment. And so I have to relinquish control. And also I have to be willing to fail. The whole fixed growth mindset thing. I need to see a failure as actually just an opportunity to learn something that's exciting that I can be curious about, as opposed to a judgment about my ability. And so I look for excuses to publicly say, "Oh, I made a mistake." That's healthy for me. I need to get my workouts in every day. But if I can only do a strength training session for 20 minutes and then I have to wait till the end of the day and do a bike session, fine. I have to be okay with that, because the old me would have been like, I need a 2-hour workout. If I don't have a 2-hour block, I'm just going to skip it. And, back to the consistency thing, it is incredibly powerful to see progress if you can be consistent, even if it's not even if in the way you're approaching it is not perfectly consistent. Like consistency has, many different definitions. If I will work out every day, but it may not be in my perfect ideal situation or for the perfect ideal amount of time. But because of that, I can maintain a very high level of health and fitness because I'm willing to be adaptable to the circumstance. We just can't control. There's so little, you have power, as Marcus Aurelius would say, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength.
I think a lot of, athletes can relate to this more rigid mindset, right? And there's a drive that we need to have to achieve our goals, but I think when we find ourselves being attached with how that needs to happen or the timeline, if they haven't yet, they will soon experience the suffering that goes along with that. And so for me personally, it was like, it sounds like such a blah word, but like relaxing into that intensity of like, oh my God, it's not going this way and it needs to go this way, to a point where you can feel panicked about it or angry about it. And for me, just that willingness, really, it started with a willingness and a readiness to just relax, and soften. I don't think that we need a whole lot more practice enduring. I believe most of society is out there enduring every day. I don't think we need a whole lot of more experience thinking. It's the more experience, it's the box breath, it's those things that you mentioned, it's getting yourself into experience, out of the intellect, into something that can actually, change the way that we move through the world, that will have a better effect on the world itself, of course, but also our well-being, our longevity in sport, and our happiness factor. But the relaxing, which is like the last thing you want to hear when you're holding on to life with white knuckles, right? Is like, oh, just relax. It's not that easy to just relax. Like it's a process and a practice, and I'm still doing it every day. But you, just the way that you speak, the energy that I get from you, it's like you're definitely the product of a repatterned mind, brain, and I'm sure you would also agree that we're all a work in progress. But I want to touch upon the plant-based part of your life. And I would love to hear, because I feel a compassion about you, not just for our fellow athletes and mankind, but I'm assuming that is spreading across, the globe to all of our Earth's beings. Is that, when did your plant-based journey begin?
So there definitely is an intersection in both stories. So I became very aware, this is a long time ago, in the late 80s, became very aware of the mistreatment of animals, animal agriculture, in science and animal testing. And when I was 16, I turned vegan, cold turkey, no animal products. And back then it wasn't understood that it was healthy at all. Like it was not established that it was healthy. And so I wasn't doing it for health. I was doing it for the animals. That's point blank. I was very into activism. And I stayed the course. Unfortunately, there also wasn't a lot of great data about nutrition and how to do that, how to be a high performance athlete as a vegan. Pretty unheard of and rare back then. So I made some mistakes. And over about a 7-year period, I was basically, what I found out later is I was not eating enough calories. So I was burning about 10,000 calories a day. Training at least 8 hours, which is crazy. And then I was eating probably like 2,500 calories, something like that. So right now I'm like very height weight proportional. Like, I'm 6'2", 180 pounds, maybe a little heavier as an endurance athlete than I'd like to be, but I'm also older. I was 135. And when I went to get my body fat tested, the doctor was like, there's something wrong with the machine. I keep testing and it keeps saying 0. I don't know what's wrong with this machine. Now, at the time, those machines weren't as accurate. They had a variation of about 2%. So best case, I had 2% body fat. I was sick all the time. I would go to a race and I'd be like, 4 hours, like curled in a ball in pain, basically because my body was eating itself for fuel. And what happened is I got to a breaking point where I literally thought I was going to die. I actually I triggered a very rare genetic disease, which I still live with today. And because of the poor nutrition and poor calories. And sadly, I then went back to eating meat because I didn't know what else to do. But I was so rigid and so determined that I was willing to put my life at risk, literally put my life at risk to not break my ideals. And so it was extremely hard to go back to eating meat. I was ashamed. I would hide the meat in the basket. For years I did this. Like, that's how badly I felt about it. Then fast forward around 2012 or 2011. Is that right? Yeah, it's been 10 years. I read Rich Roll's book, and I was like, wait a second, you can be healthy and an athlete and high performing as plant-based? Wait a second, I'm going to try this again. This time, I approached it gradually, didn't want to take a rigid approach, and I just did 1 meal a day. Then I did 2 meals a day. About 7 months in, I was like, this is awesome. I'm just going to go all in. And I've been vegan ever since again. So, yeah, it's how you approach it. I recognize the mistakes I made, and it was all about sort of the mindset and also just the lack of knowledge. So, of course, this time I went all in like I always do, trying to learn everything about plant-based eating, etc. So I'm going to pause there, but yeah, that's kind of the backstory.
What's the biggest benefit you've experienced as a plant-based athlete? What's one thing that you can't live without? I mean, yeah.
All the extra energy I have. Yeah. I mean, I'm more active physically than I've ever been. I do ice climbing in the winter. I do, alpine mountaineering. I do bike packing. I do still compete in bike racing. I have done some adventure triathlons. I get out, motivated and high energy every day. I remember how I felt in that chunk of time when I went back to eating meat. Very, very sluggish. I was on this vicious cycle of eating meat, then eating a bunch of sweet drinks to kind of pump myself back up in this roller coaster of energy. And at that time, I was 30 pounds heavier than I am now. It was the opposite, sluggish, not athletic, not poor energy. Now I'm just ready to go. I enjoy being in races and competing against 20-year-olds and beating them. I enjoy that.
Yeah, there's some superpowers there between training your mind and eating a diet that is aligned with you, right? Aligned with your values. Because, I'd argue, I don't love that word, but I'd argue that the guilt and the shame was also poisoning the food that you were ingesting.
Yeah. When you kind of learn what's going on behind the scenes, and this is actually a really cool insight. Cool insight maybe is the wrong phrasing, but Yukteswar, Paramahansa Yogananda's teacher, he actually I read this short book that he read on vegetarianism, and he pointed out, as if you really go into it, you'll sort of see what's the biology of a human, what other animals does it most closely align to? But one of the points he made, which I thought was incredible, I have dogs and cats, which are omnivores and carnivores. When let's say a cat or a dog sees a bloody carcass, they salivate. What does a human do? A human is repulsed. That's why they package the meat away from the slaughterhouse. That's why nobody likes to see blood. Like, our natural instinct is not that we're like hungry and salivating for this animal. We're like, that is horrible and disgusting, which is what other vegetarian animals do. So there's many, many, many sort of things you can look at biologically, but I just found that to be a really cool, sort of obvious but non-obvious fact.
Yeah, I love Yukteswar. He's, we talk about Paramahansa Yogananda. He's probably more well-known than his teacher Yukteswar, who is, seems to me like, an all-in kind of guy, mildly inconvenienced that he even had to be on this earth. But he's got some incredible, very insightful writings that are available to us in this time, which is just amazing. Highly recommend anybody who's curious about that or has read Autobiography of a Yogi to go a little bit deeper with Yukteswar's work as well. And then when you begin the Rewire journey, where are you with the eating? Like you said, there was an intersection there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was already back to being a vegan when we we founded Rewire in 2018. So it's, about almost approaching the 5th year. And yeah, that was the intersection was really just sort of that always searching for the right path. And, thankfully I found the right path and got a take two as it related to being plant-based. We don't have anything nutrition-wise built into the app yet, though that is something that we plan on doing because that's obviously another component to performance. So right now we have physical, cognitive, and emotional. We have tools for resilience. We have tools for recovery, mind-body recovery. Nutrition will be in there at some point. So those two things are fairly separate right now, but it's definitely a very important factor, without a doubt.
So you finding your path, and this show is about people looking, finding, and living their purpose. I found my path. I feel pretty confident about that. What would you say to someone who's really looking for that path, and or how could Rewire assist them in finding that path through the mind training?
Instinct is a powerful thing, and you need to learn to listen to it. And oftentimes it's a quiet voice and very soft, at least for me. But it's true. So just learning to pay attention when you hear that little voice, and not judge it, and honor it, because I was riding my bike trainer and I just had this thought, oh, I know how it could be done. It wasn't a practical choice. I had no idea how much work it was going to take. It was incredibly difficult. And there were times I could have just been like, why bother? Or this isn't a good time. This isn't the best time. Like, just starting down the path, even if it's a tiny little step, and paying attention to those little voices. It's almost like a little, as it relates to your path, it's like a little voice of joy. You never know where it's going to take you. Like, the best exercise is you just think about where you are today. You think through all of the micro and macro things that had to happen for you to be here right now in this moment. You could never predict it. They seem unrelated. So taking that first step, you're adjusting your trajectory, and if you follow that joy, you never know where it could take you. Like, it could take you down so many amazing paths, and those little serendipitous moments that happen. So like, I think it's just listening to that quiet voice, following the joy, and allowing yourself to take that step without judgment.
Yeah, I think you're the perfect example of that, of embracing failure, embracing experience, just from your plant-based journey, like going on it early on and then falling off of it, but then coming back. And the perfectionist would say, like, no, I got to do it all. It's got to be my whole life from now has to be that. But you've shifted that. You've changed that. Like, you're describing that scenario. And I know there's going to be people listening that say, no, that can't be me. You don't understand. Like, I'm the perfectionist. I'm the one. But I think you're demonstrating that you can change. It takes time. But I think the nugget I'm pulling on is like experience. Like, it's okay to have experience after experience after experience to find what it is that brings you joy, or the path that you want to be on. But don't get caught up in the details too much. They will present themselves. They will flow in. We're smart. We're smart humans. We will find a way. But the more experience we have, the more we're going to open up these doorways to possibilities. And I think this app is going to open up people's ability to not have to be all or nothing, that we can work in the moment to shift and actually achieve what we wanted to achieve on any particular day.
That's right. Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, we have sessions that are 1 minute long. So, one of the coaches we're working with was just like, I have these athletes, they're divers. He teaches like Olympic level swim divers. And he's like, what can you give me in 1 minute to just get somebody in the right mindset when they're really frustrated? Like, imagine how technical and complicated diving is. Like, it's all in your head. What can we do in 1 minute? Well, there's a lot you can do. Words are incredibly powerful, and we're social animals. And if you give someone the gift of positivity and you take them and take their mind out of where they are right now, and you bring them through a visualization, you come out the other side, you feel like a different person. And we rarely give ourselves that. We're just like on all the time, no break, not like unplug and plug back in. That's what we need to do sometimes. We need to hit the reset button. And even if it's a minute, you'd be surprised how powerful it can be. So we use all the techniques to do that. Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of times, like the unplugging, the plugging back in, people don't do it because they don't know what to do. So your product will help them do that. And I think, maybe the biggest thing it can help people do is not give up on their day. That you've got these ways to get them ready to step into really what their heart has chosen, what they committed to. So Sun, thank you so much. We can have you on here and we can just talk about the app, and we can, like, science is cool and awesome, and we can do that. But that's not really what we're interested in. We want to know the person behind it. We want to know the meaning behind it. We really appreciate your vulnerability, your generosity of time, telling us your story, things that are important to you. It makes a big difference. It gives Rewire, a caring persona, and we appreciate that. So thank you for your time. Thank you for helping Yogi Triathlete by coming onto the show, but also training the mind is absolute cornerstone of why we exist. And so thank you for offering and developing a product, because you listen to a hit, that subtle voice, that's now available to people. So how can they get it? Like, what's the deal? Where do they find it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So they can just go to, in the app stores, search for Rewire Fitness, or they can go to our website at rewirefitness.app. Instead of .com, it's .app. They can find us on Instagram, Rewire Fitness, and we have very cool communities on Strava and on Discord. If anyone wants to join, we're constantly chatting with our users and continually improving. So look forward to seeing you guys there. And I really appreciate the conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. All right, have an awesome rest of your day.
You too.